I wanted to talk a little bit about HSMs. So hardware security modules are hardware appliances that are used in the encryption process. And what I want to explain here is that HSMs have a part to play, but they also represent something that comes out of how encryption was done and how it originated. Hardware security modules are these appliances. They go into data centers, and when data is encrypted, they store the keys. They also can do encryption operations, and there's different types of HSMs. But right now, I want to talk about the encryption keys. So encryption keys are very much like encryption. They are keys that are created digitally, made up of mathematical algorithm that are used to unlock and lock data. And so HSMs, these hardware, were sort of the way that banks and financial institutions and anyone that really needed to protect data well and encrypt that data, protected that data through the encryption keys. And often HSMs are very focused on specific use cases. So those use cases can be applications, they can be databases, they can be transactions, but usually they're very specific to the actual use case. So for example, I wanted to encrypt data that goes across a point of sale machine. So I might use an HSM or some type of HSM to store the encryption keys that happen with those transactions. I might go through authentication between sort of the point of sale device and to the bank or the authorization provider, but it provides that protection against any kind of unauthorized use. And so I don't want to say that HSMs are not useful or that they're just the old way of doing things, because there always will have a place. It's just that there are new ways of encrypting data, protecting data, using data, where HSMs can sort of fall down because they can be complex, they're hard to manage, they're often very expensive. Often you're not going to have multiple use cases that are all stored on one HSM. Again, very useful for what their intended purpose is, but there are new ways of doing things. And so what an HSM can often provide that we'll talk about regularly is something called a root of trust. So root of trust is to say that I have a key and I know where the key comes from. It's rooted in this piece of hardware. And then I can use those keys in the hardware to sort of protect data. And so that protected data can be either what we call wrapping or putting an envelope around other keys, which is what I'm going to talk about in a moment. Or it can be actually doing the encryption key management itself. As we move on to sort of how things happen now, modern key management allows you to do encryption key management around many different use cases. And so data is moving out into many places, whether that's in a public cloud provider like AWS or Google Cloud Platform or Microsoft Azure, for example. As the data moves out, you may want to still use a hardware security module in your data center to create the keys and sort of, again, provide that root of trust. Root of trust is something I'll explain a little bit more in my next snippet. But if I wanted to provide those keys up to the cloud, for example, in what we would call a BYOK setup, bring your own key, you could do so through the use of newer, more modern key management facilities like a key management system that is software-based, like SVKMS, where you can deploy it wherever you want to put it, and you can use it for many different use cases, whether those are applications or databases or transactions that go across, a network. You can use a KMS to facilitate all of these functions. Now, we still may want to use HSMs, again, as I just explained. And so how that works is we'll continue to use the HSM as I know where the key is stored. I trust it. That's the root. I'm going to use that to put envelopes around other keys. And those keys then can do things. They can do things like be rekeyed or what we call rotated, or it can be in different states. And all those states can map to basically policies that a security manager might have, like I only want these keys used for a certain time frame or certain people or certain groups. That allows that security administrator to create policies. And so what SVKMS does is it says, okay, I can manage all of these different HSMs and extend their abilities through all these proper key lifecycle management through this virtual appliance. So, and it does this through a particular protocol that we call PKCS11. It just defines how encryption can communicate with hardware security modules. So next time we'll talk a little bit more about root of trust and what that means and how that is facilitated in an encryption ecosystem. So this is just a primer to give a little bit more information around where do HSMs fit into the whole encryption lifecycle.